Hello there, and welcome back to Veritas Live. I hope you all had a great holiday. As always, I am your host, Anthony Cusimano, and we have a very awesome episode lined up today. We are talking all about the future state of data management and compliance in the cloud. It's going to be some good stuff. And speaking of good stuff, I'm going to introduce our awesome panel of experts. With us today, a very special guest. We have Cynthia Meyn. Cynthia is a former CTO, COO, and CRO from Wall Street. She currently serves as an executive advisor to numerous private equity firms, and one of her key responsibilities is to ensure that the portfolio of her companies run their compliance systems to the highest standards. Very important guest of honor. Welcome, Cynthia. Also with us today is David Scott, Senior Director of Product Management here at Veritas with a focus on digital compliance, and Sam Elbeck, a Director of Business Development for Digital Compliance. Welcome, David and Sam.
Thanks.
Now, we always like to start our shows with a bit of a fun icebreaker, and given Cynthia's expertise and experience, I thought we would start with you, Cynthia. So the icebreaker for today, given your leadership in this space when it comes to regulation and compliance, in every journey of learning, there comes a moment when you realize, oh crap, we got to take compliance a bit more seriously. And I'm curious, in your career, when was that moment for you?
Yeah, well, working in compliance, sadly, I've seen a lot of that over the course of a few decades. But we're buying companies, and a lot of times we buy companies that have experienced some sort of trauma. And so you sometimes have the petty stuff, like somebody that's redirecting trade errors to their trade error reclaims or overdraft reclaims to their personal accounts. Sometimes you have stuff in the news, like a guy who converted a customer account, traded out of equities into fake bonds, took the money and said the bonds were there, but they really weren't. And then you have stuff, I was trying to think, the best one was a mortgage servicer on a couple of nursing home pooled FHA bonds who skimmed the principal, ran away with it, pretended the loans were still alive, and actually he went to jail for 8 years. So compliance is super important. Without compliance systems, you have a hard time making sure people are, operating in accordance with the rules.
I couldn't ask for a better opener, I don't think. Hopefully all of our audience feels now the ears on edge. No one wants to go to jail. You're going to pay good attention to this episode. So let's go ahead and get into it. Thank you, Cynthia, for that. That is scary stuff we need to take far more seriously. So speaking of taking things seriously, I'm kind of curious, where are we at today? So David, I'd like to start with you. Where are we now with compliance, and how did we get here? What's your thought on the situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've been working on digital compliance since about 2006. I started my career in the early 90s, and compliance has evolved a great deal over that time. Like when I started my career, everything was on email and only email. All files were shared on a single file server across the company. So compliance was easy. And at the same time, there wasn't the level of scrutiny, the level of regulations that there are today. But obviously things have changed. And I think that compliance has really come of age over the last couple of decades, really. And now, I mean, you've got 30 ways to communicate on your cell phone. You need to be able to capture all of that and control all of that, either be able to capture the content and monitor it or prevent it from being used for business use. At the same time, the regulations are much more stringent. You've got MiFID II in Europe. You've got data privacy in every major country, in some cases, different regulations in every state. And you've got to constantly be aware of constant changes there. And at the end of the day, I mean, you've got so many sources that you have to monitor. You have a deluge of information. You need to surface the most important content and hide the noise so that your reviewers can adequately get through the content that they need to monitor on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would say right now we're at an inflection point between the world of paper and the world of non-paper. I can certainly remember days where we would fax wire instructions. In fact, people still say, why do you need a fax machine? Well, because it's a secure, authenticated means of communication. Let's go back to the fax, given how many cyber incidents there have been lately. But we're obviously moving into a digital world with, as David said, a lot of different means of communications. People can can text something, chat something, email something, voice call on their second cell, burner phone. And all of these different means lead to a digital puzzle that without a sophisticated system, it's tough to put back the pieces to track the root crime. So, or to trap a crime in the process before it actually occurs. So right now we're in the middle of a sea change.
Yeah, and to add to that, when you look globally, there's around 1,800 different compliance regulations that deal with data management. So just that in itself is mind-boggling. There used to be a situation where I've got a compliance requirement. Do I really need to comply? You've all seen the fines coming through. Everyone's getting fined millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars because they need to manage their data. They need to know where the PHI data is. They need to be able to, as Dave was saying, surface it, manage it, and store it in a location that's immutable if needed, and keep it for the time frame you need to keep it, and then purge it when needed. That's really where compliance is, and that's what, when we look at regulations and look to advise our clients, we want to give them the full picture of here's the regulations that you are dealing with, and here's how to best manage them across all these different communication platforms that are out there today.
So I know it's increasingly difficult to manage all of these different kinds of angles across these platforms. I like, Cynthia, your comment on getting back to the facts. I don't know if that's a possibility, especially for someone like me who doesn't even know how to use one. But I am curious, as we start to consider cloud as part of the equation, how does it play into compliance, and what do people need to be thinking about compliance in the cloud? Sam, you seem to be on a roll here. I'm curious what you think.
Okay, sure. So when you look at compliance in the cloud, you have to look at it at what point in the journey of compliance is your organization at today? Do you already have a compliance solution in place that's on-prem? Then you want to make sure that when you move to the cloud, and the reason you have many cloud-first initiatives today is you want to move systems to a cloud-based solution, get rid of the infrastructure, manage your costs better, but you don't want to lose any functionality. You don't want to lose any features, and you want to make sure you're future-proofed down the line. And that future-proofing comes into play when you start looking at how do I manage all these different communications. So you look at, what do I have today? I want to make sure that I can discover against the data, categorize the data, classify it, put it where I need to put it, and purge it when I need to. So you look at the total view of what you have today. You want to move that to the cloud. You want to make sure you have all those same features plus a future-proof view of where you want to be. And one big aspect of cloud is moving to the cloud. When you have all this data that is on-prem and it's classified and it needs to be audited when you move it, you need to make sure organizations are always concerned on migrating this compliance data to the cloud, a secure location, and migrate it in a secure manner. So those are the things that organizations think about from a compliance standpoint when they have a compliance solution. And organizations that are looking to implement a compliance solution to meet new regulations in their territories, they look at similar things. They're going to be more born in the cloud, but they need to think about, I need to make sure that I'm covered from all the different communication methods out there and to be able to discover it when needed. So those are some of the things that we look at when we think of cloud compliance.
Yep. I might add to that. When the private equity firms I work with are buying companies, they're buying companies that are carve-outs, and we have to stand up brand new infrastructure. A lot of times we're buying companies planning to integrate that company into a strategic, larger company. And we are going to be faced with multiple on-premise solutions often that are legacy, and also disconnected data stores, that one store for voice, one store for write fax, electronic faxes, another store maybe for email, and another yet for chat. And so if we have a company that thinks they just have one or two data stores, and then it turns out we have 27 different ways of communicating, it's great to go cloud first and find a partner that can help you merge, integrate, standardize, harmonize the data stores into one data store. And from there can do pattern matching. Also, as these companies continue to grow, you think about tacking on another data store, tacking on another means of communication. A lot of these communication sources actually are already in the cloud. Why move them on-prem? when you can just move within the cloud or collect them within the cloud and easily scale. So for me, keeping all those different data stores secure in an on-prem system with a short time frame to acquire a company, it's not really achievable. Whereas moving it to the cloud provides a cost efficiency, a greater level of higher availability across more larger number of communication channels, and scales for the future beyond what an on-prem solution could do.
That's a great point. And I think just to add to the idea of like bringing companies together, the mergers, acquisitions happen all the time. And we've seen many times where one of our customers, a customer buys a company, they're using maybe our cloud solution, the company they buy is using our on-prem solution. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that that transition is easy. So you can still access your legacy store from our cloud solution. Or you can migrate that data from on-prem to cloud. That's a very big, very important aspect of it as well. I'd also just add to what Sam and Cynthia said, in that I think cloud also brings faster adoption and less friction in adopting new content sources. It's easier to spin up a SaaS solution for communications. And so we sometimes see that at the work group level, where a work group decides, I want to use Slack, or I want to use something different than the company standard. And to ensure compliance, you need to be aware of that. You need to be able to capture that or prevent it if you're not, if that's not company standard. But we're seeing a lot of that where pockets of users are starting to spin up a different solution that may vary from the company standard. So you definitely have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and there probably is going to be a point in time where, and we're in it now, there's going to be a hybrid solutions required, a little bit of on-prem, a little bit of cloud while that transition takes place. And that's something else that I hear a lot from our clients and speaking to them, is their concern is that time while I am moving over, is it possible to manage both systems? And that's what Dave is referring to, the ability to discover your cloud data, your on-prem data, all from a single search, is something that has become quite a big request we hear from our clients.
Sam, that's actually a great point, and I think you're almost reading the mind of our audience. We have a question from Tarek, I believe. I apologize if that's not how you pronounce your name. Tarek asks, when you move to the cloud, do you intend to decommission the physical part? And if so, what happens when the cloud is attacked by cyber? How then do you, do you revert back to a backup legacy, or what happens in that case?
I can take that. First question, like, would you be moving from on-prem to cloud? I mean, we make it simple. So if you want to keep the on-prem solutions, you want to keep standing that up and keep accessing it, you can do that from our cloud solution. You, at the time of a discovery event, you can target that legacy content, bring it into that discovery event. But if you do want to, decommission and move to the cloud, we help bring your content over. And as far as the concern around security, I mean, we have very comprehensive security strategies around how we preserve the content, how we make sure that that doesn't happen, more than we can get into in a quick session here. But that is definitely something we take incredibly seriously. And we've got strong processes in place to make sure your data is protected.
That's an awesome answer. I feel like I just learned something, Dave, so thank you there. So I'm curious, as we start to look towards the future, as far as compliance is concerned, where are we going next? And I'm really curious to hear what you all think is going to be up on the horizon. Dave, you're already on a roll. Let's hear what you think about the future.
Well, I think the future, the problem with normal is it always gets worse, right? And I think that the new normal is, it's kind of a cliche to talk about COVID in the sense of the new normal, but that's shown where things could go. And what's next? I mean, are we going to be meeting virtually in the metaverse? And are we going to be looking for visual cues and gestures and things like that? I mean, there's all kinds of new metadata that we may need to consider, new ways of communicating. It's just the problem's not gonna get any easier in the coming years. And Cindy, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, it's easy to write policies. It's actually not that easy to write policies. As Sam just said, there's hundreds of regulations. But beyond regulations, there's also like best practice. Those of us who are invested in these companies, the investors are hoping that the company can procure insurance, and it's hard to procure cyber insurance or errors and omissions, fraud insurance if one doesn't have a best practice compliance regime. So when I look to the future, I see that bad actors are always desperate people, always find some workaround. And, whether it's a screenshot, multiple screenshots on multiple platforms where the mountain means one thing and the lake means another. What I hope is that AI and machine learning will help us put these patterns of data together. In the old days, you would use your email monitoring system to find out, how did this possibly happen? Where did the person start this crime? But I find that in the new world, these tools can help us preempt the crime before it occurs. So whether it's the tone of voice, whether it's the video, the embedded screenshot on multiple platforms, the texted photo, all of that stuff needs to be brought together to figure out what these folks are doing. Because the petty stuff like skimming overdraft fees, it's not that expensive. But the big stuff, which is preventable, can be millions, tens of millions. Even I've seen in the subprime crisis, in the great financial crisis, in the high 8-9 figures, where we would be looking at, who created those subprime debt instruments, mounds of paper. People aren't using paper to commit crimes anymore. So it's an opportunity for systems like the cloud Veritas system actually to piece all of that together for those of us who are on the good side.
I think that's great, and it comes with understanding as much as you can about the content. Like one thing that we've been working on lately is the idea of detecting fraud based on audio cues. And you get a lot of calls like this one where you've got a close-up of someone's face. What can you learn from that? Maybe visual cues of expressions and that sort of thing. To your point, in order to be successful as this problem gets worse, we are going to have to find new ways of learning over time. And machine learning, looking for helping guide to the reviewers to what is probably relevant, and try to make interpret future actions based on activities over time.
Yeah,
even ransomware. I think about even ransomware. I see a lot of ransomware these days, and it comes down to someone spoofing the email system to get misdirected wire instructions, or to get an email and a password. Then these people are lurking around. They gather all this information and put it on the dark web. But the initial outreach, the initial phish, the initial act of collecting somebody's username and password is a form of communication. And all of that happens over text, over phone. I really feel like that could be nipped in the bud, I'm trying to say, once everything is in the cloud and all of the communication streams are coming into a sophisticated system that can lever AI like Veritas, those types of inquiries could be clipped off, and the person could say, hey, I just saw you put your username and password into this system at the prompt of some email. Why did you do that? And do you know that person? It just kind of find out a little bit earlier before it becomes a large ransomware situation with PII involved.
Yeah, and you have to, as you guys are saying, both of you hit on it, is the systems that you're using today for email, for example, and you're looking for certain keywords like insider information, whatever system is implemented, you always have to look across the whole spectrum. So you need that same features and functionality for Teams, for Yammer, for Jabber, for Bloomberg, for Symphony, for all the different sources that you're monitoring, to be able to find that same word as it's flowing into your system and be able to send that to the auditors in time. That's what organizations are looking for when you look at the future of compliance, is that ability to do all that across the whole continuum of your data, and be able to look at things like sentiment analysis, like Dave was describing, the cues, the voice changes. All that is now at hand with the technologies that we're utilizing and the systems that we have to be able to do it. So depending on how far you want to take your compliance requirements, the technology is there to implement it. It's just more about understanding what they want to be. And I want to go back to the word being future-proofed for your compliance solution is key, to be able to have a dynamic system that's changeable and you have access to your data when you need it at the same time.
I just want to say the future, as scary as it sounds, also sounds incredibly optimistic by the way y'all say we can solve for it. So kind of an amazing situation where it's 2 parts scary, 3 parts fixable. So it's looking pretty bright, even with all the risk out there.
You remember that show? What was it, from the 80s, Beyond 2000, where you try to look at the future and what was coming down. The Beyond 2021 for compliance is looking pretty good.
I like it. We're getting there. Well, again, I want to thank all 3 of our experts, Cynthia, Dave, Sam. Thank you so much for bringing your insight and your input into this upcoming and continuing age of digital compliance and what we can look forward to on the horizon. I do want to mention, if you would like to see the Veritas digital compliance products in action, you'll be able to join Dave in a webinar tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific, for an interactive demo of the Veritas Digital Compliance Winter Portfolio release. He's going to be joined by a guest speaker, Greg Buckles, who is a governance and legal analyst with EDJ Group, and they're going to discuss the rapid increase in regulation demanding more and more integrated and intelligent approaches to compliance, supervision, e-discovery, the list goes on. So we're going to include a link to that, and you can register in the comments section. So if anything you've heard today has piqued your interest, definitely click that link and attend that webinar. We already know Dave has all the answers, so you're definitely going to want to stick around and join that webinar. We also are going to leave you with a very special treat today. So thank you for sticking through the episode and making it all the way through. We have a preview for you of our latest ransomware fears campaign, so you can find out exactly how we make ransomware fears Jackie. We hope you enjoy it, and thank you again to our guests for being here today.
Thank you.
No more gaps. No more silos. No more uncertainty. It's all under control. That's why ransomware fears Jackie.